I've gone into deep detail about why I don't like either of the two people we're going to be covering today. In both their cases, the thing that's unique about both of them is the fact they have both managed to build a somewhat sizable career. In the case of Blaire White, a very large one. In the case of Arielle Scarcella, a tenuous one. On the anti-trans bandwagon. Obviously, Blaire White, despite being a trans woman, is not exactly a champion of trans rights, not exactly a big fan of trans people herself, honestly. And Arielle Scarcella is a cis woman, but is basically has always been a grifter. I believe that Blaire White is a grifter. I do, looking at the way that she faked her political compass test results and the way that she's lied about numerous, easy to disprove topics in the past to her audience. I don't believe that she is legitimate whatsoever in her goals or her motivations. I believe it's all for money and prominence and clout for her. And as for Arielle Scarcella, I mean, she's always been a grifter. Look back at her old content before her big right-wing shift. Her content has always been focused on sexualizing and fetishizing being a lesbian. In fact, if you want to a good idea of what I'm talking about here, just to know that I'm not talking out my ass with this, let's go to Arielle Scarcella's channel and look at her most popular videos. Jesus Christ. I'm fine with sexualizing and stuff like that. Like I said in my previous segment, I'm fine with it. But to claim that that's not what a lot of her most popular content was meant to be about is ridiculous here. So how many of them does she still have up? Lesbian girlfriend dream girl, my first time, how to go down on a girl. Dear lesbian men, love lesbians. My first time being turned on. What? Lesbians explain what they think about gay men. How to eat a girl out. Everything you didn't know about my vagina. Oh my god, this one's hilarious. Look at this one. Penis will change you. Sex with guys is greater than sex with girls. Jesus Christ. Yeah, so about 9 years ago or so, she was really popular for her clickbait sex thumbnails. Here, look at this one. Shit only lesbians say in bed, and it's her with herself in underwear in the bed. Yeah, that was what she basically grew her audience on. And all well and good. You know what? If you wanna do the clickbaity sexualized content for money, who gives a shit? I don't fucking care. The thing is, though, that stopped making her as much money, probably because of YouTube cracking down on sexualized content more. And so she switched to the I used to be a lefty. She was never a lefty. There's no evidence whatsoever she was ever left-wing, other than her being a lesbian, which does not make you left-wing intrinsically. She basically did the whole, I was a left-winger, but now I'm a conservative thing, even though there's no evidence she ever was a left-winger, despite her 8 years plus of online presence. And now she's just on board with the anti-trans grift as well, the pro-right-wing, whatever you want to call it, grift. So we're going to be covering a video both these individuals did, collabing together, to talk about the trans groomers on TikTok and in schools. So let's go ahead and hear what they have to say about it, huh?
Between teaching them about real life and teaching them an ideology.
Correct.
And you are overstepping the parents' boundaries when you teach them an ideology.
So welcome back. I am here with the one.
By the way, this is the exact same thing that Christian fundamentalists who didn't want schools to teach about evolution used to say. That evolution isn't proven, it's a theory, it's an ideology. We should be teaching kids that, whatever they want to learn, whatever the parents want. It was always the parents, right? The kids should learn how the universe was made and where we come from the way the parents want it to be known. There was for a long time a big push against teaching that dinosaurs were real in school. For a very long time, whether or not schools would be allowed to teach evolution and that dinosaurs were real and whatnot was a question. It was a thing that was on the table. And this issue is the exact same thing, okay? Conservatives trying to use it's an ideological thing as an excuse to keep young people from learning reality. Because, and this is very important, the right is built upon a population of undereducated and ignorant people. I'm not shitting on people who are undereducated in principle, but the right broadly has been able to experience as much success as it has due to ignorance and under education and lack of funding to our education system and lack of access to it. There is no way that a country of reasonably well-educated people could be led to some of the conclusions that many people in our nation have been. But if you look at who has always been on the forefront of the anti-teacher, anti-school, anti-education bills meant to defund schools, bills meant to cut funding and to make it harder for teachers to do their job, it has always been Republicans. Yeah, I know. I'm upset about it too, Luna. It has always been Republicans at the forefront of these bills meant to make it harder for teachers to teach students and to make it harder for our education system to educate students, because an educated population is a progressive population.
One and only Miss Blaire White. We're in Austin, Texas, and we filmed something for
me.
When it is up, I will have the link in the description for you guys, and I'm sure I'll tweet about it and such too.
Yeah, something really fun.
Yeah, but we can't talk about it yet. It's a surprise, but we did film something for her. And now we're gonna talk about the bullshit leftist, crazy LGBT people that are teachers on TikTok.
Oh my God. Okay, yeah, we're good.
Hey, I should point out, we just watched that Sydney Watson video. The lack of arguments and just the complete appeals to emotion, like, haha, that was silly, that was gross, am I right? Didn't that make us feel intrinsically like they must be wrong? Let's not think about this anymore and just make fun of these people's appearances. That's literally all this is going to be. Because conservatives will never have actual arguments. They never will. The best conservative demagogues will only ever be good at misrepresenting data that proves our positions right. The best conservative demagogues, look down the list, the best conservative demagogues, the ones that are most successful and most influential, are the ones that can either lie or twist data that literally proves us right into their narrative. How many times has a conservative sent me a study when I'm debating them on like the trans thing where I'm like, the author of this study has literally come out to say this study doesn't mean what you're saying it means. It's happened at least a dozen times to me. The right doesn't have any reality to back up their arguments.
Listen, just because somebody is lesbian or trans doesn't mean that we're crazy.
Right, only kind of.
Or a little bit.
Only
in a good way.
Only kind of. There's good crazy and then there's like harmful crazy.
Hi, my name's Az and I'm a preschool teacher. So my classroom celebrates diversity. It's probably my favorite thing to teach. We usually use kids' books to talk about this kind of thing. Recently we started wearing pronoun pins, and the kids get to pick a new pronoun pin every day. We have some that pick like she, her every single day, and we have some that change it up.
So what do you think about that? Different pronoun pins every day for 4-year-olds.
What? Different pronoun pins for 4-year-olds. Yeah, you really got them there. That's really abusive, you know? That's grooming right there. You know, I think I got groomed in school too, come to think of it. You know, when I was in school, on the first week of us being in elementary school, the teachers would have us wear little stickers with our names written on them so we get to know each other's names and everything. I think, you know what? That's grooming. I must have been groomed, according to these two.
Oh my God.
First of all,
we've spoken about this.
Why do they always look like children?
Also, I should clarify, Blaire White has said she's known she's a woman since she was 5 years old. So anytime Blaire White makes the kids can't know what their real gender is, just know she's literally gone on record saying that she knew she was trans as young as 5 years old. So she's literally her life story and her opinions, more or less, will change based on what will get her the most positive response from her audience.
Themselves. These people seem to be caught in the mindset of a child. Pronouns are not Pokemon cards. You're not supposed to collect them, trade them, swap them in. It'd be one thing. It's if there wasn't serious ramifications long term, but you're setting these kids on a trajectory.
Please tell me one serious ramification that could occur from giving kids pronoun badges in school. Please explain to me how that can have long-term ramifications. Do you remember when the conservatives for a while had to keep the mask on? Do you remember back when the conservatives on the trans issue kept the mask on? Because they did for a long time. For a very long time, it wasn't that they hated trans people, and it wasn't that they wanted to keep trans people from being able to transition or live their life. It was that it's kids, it's when the kids want to transition or the parents are forcing kids to transition, and it's the chemical or medical stuff or whatever. They would get really upset about that and say it's just the irreversible stuff they have issue with. But now, you give them an inch, they take a mile. Now they're claiming that letting your kid wear pronoun badges is grooming, and that any form of transition, even if it's completely social and non-permanent or physical, is now child abuse. They literally just hate trans people. And as for Blaire White and Arielle Scarcella, their opinions on trans people is really just irrelevant, if I'm being honest with you. What Blaire White and Arielle Scarcella truly feel about trans people does not matter. Their content is no different than the content you would get from somebody who just virulently hates them to every single fiber of their being, okay? Because she's making content for an audience that is like that. And unfortunately, sizable part of her audience that is also trans that happen to discover her as their first like trans content creator and sort of like a role model and start to model their behavior and their attitude off of her. There are a lot of little mini Blaire Whites on Twitter, trust me.
Toward puberty blockers. It's not just pronouns.
Right.
If you start confusing a kid about what their gender is early on, that's the trajectory.
This doesn't even have to be necessarily about gender because people aren't even like actual gender, how you and I understand it, like gender, or like being gender dysphoric or not being gender dysphoric. This doesn't even mean that to them anymore.
No.
This is how I feel today. I feel more masculine and more feminine.
Right, which
Back
is like,
in the day,
congrats, but...
Yeah, that's like everybody and every day. Like you were even talking about that. You're like more dominant in your relationships no matter what. It's also because you're a Virgo.
Yeah, true. True. She was teaching about all the astrology.
It's true. Virgo's their way of the highway.
Okay. The two individuals explaining how the crazy leftists are anti-science while also talking about how much they love astrology in the same video is like peak conservative irony. Just peak conservative irony. Like it's on par with when that one Flat Earth Society Facebook group accidentally said the Flat Earth Society has members all over the globe.
And a Cancer's like, yes, ma'am. And we love every second of it. Joey does not love it. He does. He's like, I fucking love it.
Oh, yeah. He wouldn't have it any other way.
So I recently realized that there's a whole lot of really amazing figureheads and people to look up to in this world who aren't white or straight or male or what have you. And that we should learn a little bit more about these people.
A lot of the gender ideologues that we see, and you see them,
Wait. What at all there was like a problem? It was literally all they said was there are plenty of historical figures worth looking up to that are not just straight white men, and I think it's worth learning about them. Let's hear why that's a bad thing.
all the teachers. It's very much a suburban white, never had a struggle in my life, female thing.
Yes. And that's a psychological thing that we need to have a therapist.
I love how quickly people like this will adopt identity politics when it suits their narrative, right? Like these people say that the left is obsessed with gender and sex and identity and everything. They'll constantly accuse the left of being obsessed with that, and yet they're the first ones to bring up somebody's identity in an argument. Blaire White will always Blaire White and her fans' go-to argument against me or somebody like me is, you think I'm wrong? Well, I'm trans and you're cis, so I intrinsically know better than you. That is literally the number one argument, like true scum and people like Blaire White will immediately go to. Is the immediate like id poll argument. And it's just always really funny to me when they do that because they're always the first to claim that id poll's this thing that the left does and it's toxic and the left is awful. Yeah, it really is just hypocrisy through and through.
Like, seriously.
Every video we do should have a therapist.
Because, like, what? It is a common theme. I'm not sure what it is exactly yet.
You don't see black teachers doing this?
No.
You don't see Mexican teachers doing this? You don't see Asian teachers doing this? This is such a white liberal thing. White liberals are destroying the planet.
All right. I talked about the Nazgul vortex for a while and how, like, there is going to be, like, this weird pseudo-lefty populist push, like... I have no doubt in my mind that your types like Peter Coffin and Mike from PA, the types that just sort of just nonstop shit on liberals all day, their number one political enemy, as far as I can tell, seems to be liberals. Those types, I guarantee you, within the next couple of years are going to be so buddied up and cozied with white nationalists and Nazis and like these alt-right grifter types, because they are, the second these types of people start to realize that the shitting on white liberals is what's popular with young politically disenfranchised teens, they're going to start adopting that type of rhetoric, that like Jimmy Dore super populist type of rhetoric really, really fast once they realize how effective it can be. Guarantee that's what's going to happen. Know for a fact it's what's going to happen. liberals are fucking garbage, though. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I'm sorry, but lefties who just nonstop shit on liberals, it comes off as a massive red flag to me. I've said this on stream before, but like right now, Republicans are successfully taking away the rights to get an abortion for a massive amount of uterus havers in this country, okay? The idea that like liberals and Republicans, like the idea that liberals are even worth spending the breath dunking on when Republicans are even at a fraction of the power they're at now, to me, indicates that your priorities and your goals are more like you're like a LARPy theory bro. You don't really actually give a shit about minorities or their rights. Like, that's the vibe that I get from people who just, like, are lefties that nonstop shit on liberals. I'm sorry. I every single time when it's, like, the nonstop shitting on liberals, it feels like they're diverting attention, or maybe even purposely diverting attention from the shit the Republicans are doing to harm our freedoms, to try to divert a, let's be completely honest, unwarranted amount of hatred towards Democrats.
All right, so something that's really cool and unique about who I am is that I am transgender. So we touched a little bit about that at the beginning of this week in the book that Miss Hammond read, but I'm going to give you my explanation about what it means to be transgender as well. So when babies are born, the doctor looks at them and they make a guess about whether the baby is a boy or a girl based on what they look like.
It's not a guess. They observe a penis or a
I do like these YouTubers explaining to teachers how they're wrong. That's the funny thing to me as well, is that notice how it really is Teachergate. You know how I said it would be Teachergate? How like the next Gamergate era would be Teachergate? It has become, I was right. Literally all the content that the right-wingers are putting out now is against TikTok teachers. Did I just like not notice my prophecy getting like completely confirmed there? I think I said this like 3 months ago that that the big like culture war is going to be against teachers. Yeah, I like, of course, like, to be clear here, this is no different than back in the day when conservative politicians would do everything in their power to try to cut the pay of public school teachers as much as possible to make the education that, you know, generations of students are getting much less, good. The more undereducated students that grow into adults and reach voter age, the more Republicans they have.
vagina. Your gender is observed. Your gender is not assigned. It is observed. God, I hate that.
They're making the
this is literally just anti-science. The literal medical terminology is assigned gender at birth. Like, this is the currently established medical terminology is assigned gender at birth. A doctor looks at your genitals, and if you have a penis or a vagina, if you have a vagina, they'll say you're a girl, and that is going to determine before you can even speak, or before you even have enough mental wherewithal to have like self-awareness of who or what you are. A doctor and your parents have decided exactly how you're going to be raised, what pronouns you're going to go by, what your name is going to be, and what type of life you're going to have, essentially. I mean, the life that parents are going to prepare their little girl for is going to be very different than the life they prepare their little boy for. Even if it's the most progressive, egalitarian parents in the world, let's be honest, nobody is immune to the expectations and stereotypes of our society, and that's going to affect the way that you're raised. The funny thing is, as well, is that Blaire White and Arielle Scarcella are going to continuously make the argument that it's the left that are pushing these crazy gender ideology ideas onto kids, when in reality, in our current world, every single day, new children are born, like babies are born, and before they can even speak, before they could even say their own name, their name, gender, and basically entire life is set out for them, right? And all it is to be trans is to realize later in your life that that was a mistake. Actually, I'm something else. And to hope to God that the people you care about will respect that transition. But as long as people like Blaire White and Arielle Scarcella keep on making content like this, that is not going to happen as broadly as we would like to see it anytime soon.
Doctors look bad for doing their job.
If your ideology requires you to lie, that's not right. Like, you're lying. Doctors do not get.
Oh my fucking God. Chat, I feel like it would be criminal for me not to bring up the Blaire White cheating on her or lying about her political compass test results here. Hold on. I'm going to rewind this because, okay, we know Blaire White is a liar because she literally like faked her political compass test results and like did not do a good enough job hiding it. Like, she was caught pretty red-handed. I want to hear what she has to say about herself, because she is going to essentially be expressing what she feels about herself without outright saying it here. So let's go ahead and hear what she has to say.
Whether the baby is a boy or a girl, based on what they look like.
It's not a guess. They observe a penis or a vagina. Your gender is observed. Your gender is not assigned. It is observed. God, I hate that.
They're making the doctors look bad for doing their job.
If your ideology requires you to lie, that's not right. Like, you're lying. Doctors do not guess. And even in the point, whatever...
Wait. Oh my God. Doctors do guess. They make educated guesses, but doctors guess all the time. Wait. Blaire, you understand doctors are human beings, right? They, like, have human brains that can forget things or not know things, and sometimes they have to brush up on a topic, or sometimes they misdiagnose. Doctors make mistakes all the time. Literally, the entire field of science, medical science too, is literally all about doing a thing. I'm very much going to simplify it. Doing a thing until you figure out how it works. Then if contrary information comes along to tell you that's not how it works, adapting your understanding of how you think that thing works now and testing it. The scientific method governs both everything to do with the medical field as well as like traditional sciences that we think of when we think science, you know, like scientists aren't these infallible beings of like robots or whatever. They're humans, but the thing that makes science so special, and the consensus among scientists so special, is that the scientific method allows for large groups of very smart, educated people to carry out tests in their own isolated areas without, you know, separate of each other's biases, to test and peer review each other's hypotheses and theories, and to come to more strongly well agreed upon conclusions about our observations of the world. And the left-wing perspective of gender, sex, and being trans, etc., is in line with those observations made by the overwhelming consensus of all of those medical professionals, scientists, doctors, etc.
That are intersex, and there's an anomaly on the outside exterior of the body. Life isn't based on anomalies. Life is based on averages.
Life is based on averages. So for a very long time, conservatives were able to say there's only two genders because there's only people born like male and female. You get penises and vaginas. But then like intersex started to become more known about, and started like people on the left started to remember, oh wait, intersex people are a thing. That completely blows their argument out of the water. Because they used to claim for a long time, sex is a binary, gender is a binary. There is only male and female, girls and boys. That is it. That is all there can be. That is what a binary is. But now when you bring up intersex, they start to panic and go, no, those are mutations. Those are freaks of nature. Those are, what they mean is freaks of nature, and sometimes they'll outright say it, but people like Blaire White will say anomaly to make it sound a little nicer, but what she means is freak of nature. I've argued with people like Blaire White before. I know what she truly believes about intersex people. I'm sorry, but that's what she actually believes. That's what she means when she says anomaly. I'm not going to sugarcoat what she actually thinks. She is a horrid human being. She is a horrible person. But yeah, like now the argument is, well, they're outliers, so they don't matter. And it's like, a binary means one or the other. There cannot be a third option and it be a binary. That's not how it works. And intersex isn't even a third option. There's dozens of different types of intersex.
And most of the time, that guess is 100% correct. There are no issues whatsoever. But sometimes the doctor is wrong. The doctor makes an incorrect guess. When the doctor makes a correct guess, that's when a person is called cisgender. When a doctor's guess is wrong, that's when they are transgender.
Everything this person has said is 1,000,000,000% in line with the current medical consensus. It may be a little bit, simpled down for children to hear, but I mean, that is literally like straight out of the DSM-5, basically.
With like leaves on it behind him, so I'm assuming these kids are like
he's talking
elementary school.
Yeah, his tone of voice indicates it's very young kids listening.
And the way he's speaking, right?
I'm a man, but when I was a baby, the doctors told my parents I was a girl. And until I was 18 years old, everyone thought I was a girl.
Oh God, we're about to get some mean shit, some really transphobic shit from these two.
And this was super, super uncomfortable for me because I knew that wasn't right. So when I was 18, I told my family and my friends that I'm really a boy, and it was like this huge weight had been lifted off of my shoulders, and I had the freedom to be who I truly am.
I feel like this is just a massive, and this is what's happening throughout the LGBT community right now, and with like racism and stuff too. It's an extreme amount of overcorrection.
Yes.
Is it okay if some
It's overcorrection, right? We're overcorrecting racism and we're overcorrecting the LGBT community, like with the... Yeah, so this is literally just rewording the regressive left thing, that the left is truly the ones that have become regressive now.
if a kid actually experiences gender dysphoria and he comes out as trans and then the parents, of course, accept them, that's all okay. This is too extreme because it's going to confuse kids. Because I know for a fact that if I was a kid growing up in today's world, I would 100% think I was like non-binary or trans.
I love that argument. Every single time I talk to a TERF, the number one argument they go to is, if I'd grown up in today's world, I would have been so confused. I was a tomboy, so they would have told me that I was trans. And it's like, no, they wouldn't. Like, my mom tried to pull that shit on me. She's not a TERF or anything, but she unironically said to me that she's worried, though, because she was a tomboy when she was a kid, and she worries that modern day doctors would have said she was trans. But then I, asked my uncles if that was true, and they were like, no, she's full of shit. Her room was always completely pink. She had tons of dresses and teddy bears and the girliest shit ever, and she would get mad if we ever got any dirt in her room and stuff. It was just a complete lie, completely made up. There are tons of women will lie about having been tomboys. I don't know what it is about being a tomboy and women wanting to pretend like they ever were one or are one, but that's a thing. I don't know why, but it's common with TERFs, and yeah, I don't know.
Oh, of course.
100%. And I spoke about this in videos before. I didn't like my body, which is very typical of young females, right? Especially young gay females.
Yeah.
I romantically was into women. I didn't know what sex was, but romantically I liked women, and I didn't think you could like women unless you were a man. And I did all the boy things.
Wait, Arielle Scarcella, if you were dealing with so much shit, if you were dealing with so much emotional trauma and turmoil because you didn't understand that women could be attracted to women and it was fine, don't you think maybe the solution to that would be for you to, as a kid, have been taught it's okay for girls to like girls and guys to like guys? That's okay. That is literally what the Don't Say Gay bill is pushing against. Being able to teach about sexuality in schools. What we're advocating for, the thing the right is advocating against, is the thing that is the solution to your problem.
Boys' clothes because I hated my body.
You'd be trans today.
I'd be trans.
And then here comes what's wrong with being trans? She's not trans.
That's the point.
So it would have been bad.
Right, that's the point.
It's irreversible.
I like how for conservatives, their argument can be, in a completely hypothetical world that doesn't exist, this would have happened because just trust me, and that's as good of an argument as. To conservatives, saying, in this hypothetical world, this is what would have happened, is as good of an argument as saying, this actually happened in our world, here's an instance of it. Them making this hypothetical example of it happening is just as real to conservatives and the viewers of this content as if it had actually happened and they were reporting on a real story and using a real anecdote. TGT says, hi, hello, what's up? How you doing? We play in Terraria. To conservatives, that is just as good of an argument.
All medical procedures that take place when a kid is trans, so it would have been bad. And you know what? Aside from him lying to them and saying doctors guess about a gender, which is a lie, which is false, it's either a delusion on his part or...
But they are guessing. Blaire, the doctor, do you think the doctor was right when the doctor assigned your gender at birth? It's really bizarre because Blaire White will sometimes just outright say she believes she's a man. Or in many cases, more often, that she's not a real woman. She doesn't consider trans women to be real women. She doesn't consider herself to be a real woman. She considers trans women and cis women to be entirely separate categories, and that considering them to be the same or treating them as the same is lying to yourself and is delusion. And I guess this is, I'm not going to psychoanalyze, but it seems as though it's born out of trying to overcompensate, worrying that if she tries to in her mind, exude herself too much on society, then society is going to push back on her. And I guess she's experienced the least pushback on her identity by making the type of content she makes now. So why would she ever stop? Why would she start making left-wing content, pro-trans content, that's just going to lead to her audience unsubscribing from her, hating her, and making her, you know, yet another bullied to the point of having to leave the internet trans woman? Like, for her, I mean, I guess logically speaking, she's making the most sound business decision, but morally, it's pretty bad.
Or a lie, one of the two. Aside from that, everything is fine with what he's saying, other than the fact that he's saying it to like little kids.
6, 7-year-olds.
There is no reason to tell these kids this. Again, it's from a narcissistic place because it's all about you. You're filming it because you want these accolades on Twitter.
Blaire White trying to call out narcissism. By the way, there's nothing narcissistic about that TikTok that we watched. Nothing whatsoever. A teacher talking about their gender identity is not narcissism, okay? Someone talking about themselves is not narcissism, okay? Blaire White, you are possibly one of the first people I think of when I think of like the word narcissist associated with a human being, okay? You are throwing stones from glass houses right now, my friend.
Or on TikTok, wherever you're posting it. You want the validation from the kids too, which is very strange.
It's coming out as trans.
That means it's a teacher that's kind of not a guy and not a girl, like somewhere in between.
Oh, so you're kind of boy and kind of girl?
Kinda, yeah.
Me too, that's me.
Okay, right on.
I want to be a boy, but I don't like
I like how the teacher is like, that kid probably isn't trans, if we're being honest. So I like how the teacher there was like, okay, right on, but was probably, but that's not what I mean. It's sort of like, like, to be clear here, this is a complicated topic. I'm not going to pretend like this isn't something complicated and like it's something that wouldn't have to be, and like it's not something that would have to be like pretty heavily dumbed down and simplified for kids to understand. I mean, the dynamics of sex and gender and how this is something that requires a pretty decent understanding of sociology and whatnot. And it's understandable if like there are people out there that feel this topic in particular could be too confusing for a lot of kids. I think it can be easily like dumbed down. I mean, hell, we've managed to explain to kids how the goddamn gravity works in a pretty simple way. Like, I knew more or less how gravity worked as a kid, but when you're an adult and you start learning about gravity from like science documentaries and shit, and you start learning it's that the universe itself bends whenever there's objects with mass, like the like reality itself bends around objects with mass, and that is what gravity is, essentially a sinking force. Like when you start learning about shit like that would be really, really hard. Like the explanation of like relativity and like Einstein's theory of gravity in its entirety would be really hard to explain to kids, and yet we still teach gravity to children because there's ways of explaining this stuff simple enough that they'll get it. We're not just going to overwhelm these kids and make it so they don't understand what they are, who they are, and like that's not the goal we're going for here. Our goal is simply, and I would hope that you would agree with this goal if you're watching this right now and even marginally progressive, that there are gay people, there are trans people. Most people in these demographics know pretty young, and it's probably good for kids to know that gay people exist and trans people exist, even at a young age, because there's a chance they could be trans, and it could help them. Not to mention, is there anything wrong with kids knowing about gay people existing or trans people existing? You would have to make the argument that there's something inherently immoral about gay people or trans people, or any LGBT like group, essentially. And I find that many people aren't comfortable making that argument. Many people who are against the whole, who are in favor of the Don't Say Gay bill and are against kids being taught about trans or LGBT people in school, when you ask them what is inherently bad about LGBT people that makes it inappropriate for kids to know about, they never, unless they just outright say like, oh, gay people are degenerate, yada, yada, like unless they go full mask off, they always end up like sputtering to find an excuse for how teaching kids about LGBT people existing could be harmful.
You know what? You have choices in this world to be all sorts of different things. I'm actually trans, so I'm not a tomboy. I'm trans.
Do you think this person's trans?
Of course not. Like
So very common trend in Blaire White videos is just to say, I don't believe insert person is trans. Blaire White also got in a lot of trouble a while back because she photoshopped a beard onto a trans woman in one of her thumbnails. There was like a trans woman that had made a hit piece on her, and Blaire White didn't like that particular journalist. So what she ended up doing was photoshopping a beard, like a rainbow colored beard, on her in the thumbnail to sort of push the idea, I guess, this journalist was like a trans trender. Literally just like a completely binary trans woman, like, you know, like you'd see her on the street and be like, that's a woman. Blaire White just photoshopped a beard on her in the thumbnail. This is 2 years ago. This was recent as well. And she never apologized. She never apologized for this.
Like, I'm like dying.
Your eyes are so far rolling in the back of your head. It looks like you're sleeping.
Yeah. She very clearly needs attention, but she's doing it with kids, and that's so disgusting. And it's funny they even bring it up, is that a Tom?
So yeah, I mean, Blaire White, for those of you guys that don't know, does regularly misgender trans people. She'll just say, I don't believe this person's trans because they don't pass well enough, and then just go on to misgender them the whole video. She hates trans people. She is a transphobe, whole and whole. Through and through.
Tomboy, because the concept of tomboy has been virtually erased.
Yeah, you can't be a tomboy
people
anymore. Yeah.
Right.
You hear the kid in the back.
I want to remind all of you, this whole tomboy erasure talking point is no different than the concern trolling dog shit Gamergate talking point that redheads are being made extinct in comics. Have you guys heard about that? There's this narrative that like redheads in like nerd media are being replaced with brown women. They got like the start of this narrative was Zendaya getting cast as Mary Jane or MJ in well, she's not Mary Jane in that, but MJ in the new Spider-Man Marvel movies. Yeah, their whole like redhead like replacement concern troll narrative. It's the same thing. The tomboy genocide is the same concern trolling fake little thing they're just trying to bring up as like an argument that is something that doesn't exist that they can try to pretend like it does. It's not real. There is no tomboy genocide. There is no ginger genocide.
Like, oh, is that like me?
Yeah.
Like, you're not really a girl, but you're not really a boy. I'm a girl, and I don't want to be a girl. I want to be a boy. And then the teacher's like, well, you can be anything you want. It's like, that's not what being trans is.
100%.
Can you imagine like them in the classroom and like a kid asks the teacher like, I want to be an astronaut when I grow up, and the teacher says you can be whatever you want when you grow up, and then Blaire White and Arielle Scarcella kick down the door and start screaming, you can't tell a kid that, it's unrealistic, you can't just be whatever you want to be. Like, I can actually imagine that going down.
Not what it is.
I think it's a mix of a few things. I think this is a narcissist who is seeking validation and attention from children, which is first of all creepy, and also pushing an ideology on kids. And I don't know how old these kids are. They sound young, but maybe not, you know, super duper young, but regardless.
I would guess elementary school.
Yeah.
What they sound, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, what the are you doing?
One of my favorite things about these conservative videos is that it's so easy for them to just like talk about a thing, spin it into their narrative, and they never have to be held accountable for if they were lying about it. Do you remember when Libs of TikTok spread that fake story about the teacher who was supposedly making the kids be furries and was putting like litter boxes in the classroom for the kids who were furries to shit in? That was a completely made up story. There was not nothing about that was true. And yet, Libs of TikTok, one of the most influential conservative figures on the internet, as well as like tons of conservative politicians and conservative demagogues, not only reported it as being true, but also just spread the story around. And even though it wasn't true, vast majority of people who saw all of that came out of it believing it was true. And when it comes to political influence, it's more of a death by a thousand cuts kind of thing, right? It takes like after you've seen 50 videos of like, or 50 stories that seem to give the impression that like trans people are bad or whatever, you're going to start to get that impression if that's how these like anecdotes have been curated for you, even if they're just outright lies and made up stories like it was in this case. And that is their goal. That is their goal. Figures like this can spew as much bullshit as they want. Nobody will ever fact check them. And when somebody does fact check them, like me, it's going to get a fraction of the views. It's going to take several times the amount of time to explain why it's a lie than it takes for her to tell the lie in the first place. And debunking someone's bullshit just isn't as attractive as the people spreading the bullshit in the first place. So figures like Blaire White can repeatedly lie about stories like this, literally just show a TikTok of a teacher more or less repeating the current like DSM-5 like medical consensus on gender identity and sex, and claim it's bullshit, claim it's because this person's a narcissistic groomer. By the way, the title of this video claims these TikTok teachers are groomers. I should clarify, they accuse these teachers of being groomers in the title of the video, so it's very, very possible that some of these teachers shown in the video are going to have their jobs gone after, because Blaire White's audience and Arielle Scarcella's audience do love going after people that they don't like on the left to ruin their lives. Like, this is a very concerted effort. Let's not get it twisted. Blaire is narcissistic. She just hates being associated with the transgender community at large. All right, listen. If you're a trans person, especially if you're a trans woman, I can understand if you find the online trans community to be ridiculously cringe, okay? I get it. I've met a lot of trans women who wouldn't be willing to say it out loud, but, you know, they genuinely believe most of the trans community is very, very cringy, that, like, some pretty weird, you know, kind of behaviors are made, like, common, like the ooh-woo cat girl kind of stuff is pretty common, and, like, There's some stuff that I've talked to trans women about, particularly that they find annoying about the trans community at large online, and they want to be more personally isolated from it. They don't really want a part of that broader community because they find it cringy and just awkward and weird, right? And there are probably pretty good reasons for that. My biggest theory is that, like, with the trans community online, you basically have a whole demographic of people who are, in many cases, going through a second puberty, but as adults. And, like, when we see a teenager going through puberty, we're like, oh, they're acting like that because they're a teenager. But when you see an adult essentially going through puberty because they're taking hormones and whatnot, they act like it, but they're an adult. So it gives a very different impression than when a teenager behaves the way they do. I think that's a big part of it. I think that's got to play a pretty big part in why there's this sort of very common perception of, like, childishness in the trans community, especially among trans women, particularly. Plus, I've literally just talked to plenty of trans women that say, yeah, being on estrogen is like a second puberty, you know? Zan, I've been watching you for quite a while. I enjoy watching you hone your skills, and every stream is better than the last. Thank you, The Dark Canuck. I really appreciate that. Messages like that definitely help keep me encouraged, you know? I'm cis and I'd rather hang out with the online trans community, the online right, who think I'm a groomer that want... Yeah, I mean, of course, I would prefer hanging out with the online trans community and the online right. Nonetheless, though, I still think it's valid if you're, like, a trans person, especially if you're a trans woman, and, like, the online trans community cringes you out, and you're like, you know, you're still pro-trans and everything, but, like, you don't want any connection or part of the online trans community because you just find that to be cringe and childish. That, I think, is completely fine. If that is where you are, and you just feel disenfranchised by the trans community because the sometimes there can be some cringe, then I get it. It doesn't make you transphobic or like a true scum or turf or whatever. As long as your positions are still, you know, firm and your ideas are still acceptable, I think it's fine. I genuinely do. I don't really know if there's gonna be much else in this video worth watching. I think I can probably give my closing statement. In fact, I think we have a boss to fight, so it's actually good timing. If you enjoyed this segment and you want to see more from me, and you want to see more content, you want to see more response videos, debates, live streams, whatever, consider leaving a like both on the stream and on the video. It helps more than you even realize. Liking the stream or video is not just a hollow gesture to show support. YouTube does look at likes, and liking videos and streams does cause YouTube to support them more in the algorithm. So, you know, I'm on my grind. I'm grinding to get our YouTube channel, or my YouTube channel. I say ours sometimes because it feels like, in part, you guys are putting work into it too, to, like, you know, get the channel to where I want it to be by the end of the year. But that also involves you guys grinding, and that grind entails you guys hitting that like button, and sometimes even commenting on the video. That helps too. But yeah, with all that said, thank you so much for watching. You can support me by following my social medias linked down below, or supporting me financially by donating, subscribing, or gifting a sub on my website, or donating on YouTube, Twitch, Streamlabs, Stream Elements, or Patreon. But with all that said, thank you so much for watching, and have a good one.